Thank you and welcome to the Patriots 300 level podcast. My name is Kevin. I'm joined by my co-host Eric. Welcome back to our 11th episode this week, where we'll be breaking down last Sunday's game versus the Panthers, discussing some news around the NFL and previewing their upcoming game against the Browns. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pats 300 level pod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day. So Eric, I think the first thing would be, what's your biggest takeaway from that Panthers game this week?
I think biggest takeaway is that they were able to win without having a great offensive game, without having a good passing attack. The defense was outstanding. They allowed only 6 points, and both those points came off of Patriots turnovers. So without that, the Patriots defense was able to have the Panthers pretty much not move the ball at all, which is just another straight week of them looking pretty good. I know the Panthers offense wasn't great. Sam Darnold was pretty horrendous, but it was just another week of the Patriots defense playing very well. And it looks like they're starting to turn around into one of those older 2000s game teams where quarterback isn't going to win you the game, or like the 2001 or early 2003 games where quarterback's not going to usually win you the game, but they're not going to lose you the game. Be a pretty good game manager, but then you're going to get a consistent dose of running the ball and good defense to make the games close.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I think this game kind of helped solidify, at least in my mind, where they beat the Jets, and it's the Jets. They beat the Chargers, which was a really good game to come out of. But the Chargers also have some issues that we could see. But winning 3 games in a row, and then also winning when you don't have your best offense in mind, where you don't have to throw the ball, your defense can be winning you the games. So that kind of mesh between the offense and the defense and special teams is really well right now. It wasn't something that we were seeing at the beginning of the year. It wasn't something they had last year. So I think this is a really good start, and hopefully they can keep stacking upon it and keep getting better and better as the season goes on, as it looks like they are. So it looks like the defense is finally starting to come together, and is able to try and win games like we thought they were originally going to do at the beginning of the season. So I think it's a really good takeaway from this game.
Yep, that's actually what I was going to just bring up. Is going into the season, this is pretty much exactly what we thought this Patriots team overall was going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
Defense was going to carry them. The offense was going to be able to move the ball with a really good running attack, and the passing game was going to be game manager esque. I think Mac overall this season has been even better than that. He's far exceeded expectations. He has probably second straight week where he wasn't great, but it showed that the team is good enough where even if he's not great, they're able to win the game. And then just 2 stats that kind of struck me that I was very surprised that is true was this is the first time that they've had a 3-game winning streak in over 2 years. Dating back to their last 3-game winning streak was when they started the 2019 season 8-0, and their last win was in October that year. Then the other thing is this is the first time that they have a winning record in over a year, dating back to week 3 of last year. So just something that as a Patriots fan, you're not used to those stretches being so far away. But like you said as well, the Panthers weren't as great as they were earlier this year, but they still played a very complimentary football game, and they're able to get the win.
Exactly. So what do you think about the defense overall? What do you think kind of has improved over this time? What's looked different? Why do you think they've gotten to the way they're at so far?
I think the past few weeks, especially, is they're able to actually get pressure on the quarterback. The first, pretty much up until the last few weeks, has pretty much just been Judon and Barmore, but you're getting consistent play from your linebackers and other defensive players as well. Carl Davis, who actually had a pretty good game, he was making some impact, disrupting the line of scrimmage, either in the run game or even getting after the quarterback sometimes. Uche had some pressures, Jamie Collins did. So I think that helps. And then also what we've noticed is the last 2 weeks, they switched more to a zone defense, which is something that throughout the year they've been probably the number one man defense in the NFL, with more than 50% of passing plays being against man. But the last 2 weeks, they switched more to zone, like they did against the Rams in the Super Bowl a few years ago, and it's been working pretty well. Miles Bryant has emerged. He's been playing very well. He gives you another cornerback. And then also by playing zone, it kind of helps the players that they currently have, like Jalen Mills, since he has to be your number 2 cornerback. He doesn't have the speed or really the athletic ability to play man against good wide receivers. So playing the zone defense helps them a lot.
Yeah, I think the two kind of factors you kind of hit on are, one, the pressure that they're getting, and the zone kind of coverage that they're doing are kind of the two biggest changes that have happened that have helped. The pressure with Barmore and Judon can really let that zone be effective, where if you have zone defense and you have no pressure, you can get picked apart really easily. So you need to have pressure up front in order to make that work. And Barmore's, you've seen his snap count go up and up and up, and every single week he shows you something completely that he is taking to the next level. There was that play where he helped force the interception for JC Jackson, where they were they're running a run to the right hand side, and well, I forget his name, Darnold, had bootlegged to the opposite side. Normally you would see everyone run to the right hand side, and something Barmore noticed with this play, he ended up chasing down Darnold and wasn't caught with that play action run to the right. So he looks the part, and as long as everything stays the current path with him, he's going to be really good to come. So I think the pressure between him and Judon has been one of the biggest parts for this defense. But the other part, again, like you had said, is the zone defense. And it's not just a typical zone where everyone's dropping back. They are doing some little nuances to it, where they're having zone but man tendencies as well. So someone takes a zone, but if someone runs a particular route, they'll take the man coverage with that. So it's a little wrinkle in the zone scheme. So it's not a straight zone. So it can add a little confusion for the opposing quarterbacks, which we've seen, especially with Darnold. It seems like he can get confused really easily. And same thing last week with Herbert. So that could be something that hopefully we'll see how other opposing quarterbacks can go up against it. Someone that's maybe more seasoned, more poised. If you look at the schedule, there really aren't that many left. So that could be their benefit too. So I think those two big things with the thing. One last kind of side note too. You mentioned Carl Davis, and I think he was really good in this game and actually helped kind of displace one of my pet peeves, Dietrich Wise. So if you notice, a lot of the run plays where they were able to stuff the run, Dietrich Wise wasn't out there. It was Carl Davis, what's his name, Godchow in the end, and then Guy as well. So I think kind of displacing Wise from the end and the 3-4 can be really impactful if they keep that up.
Yep. And then one thing that I didn't mention that also has definitely helped the defense a lot is their run defense has been outstanding. Probably after the week 3. So I just have the stats here. Game 4 against the Bucks, 120 yards, which is kind of a lot for a team that isn't a great running team, but I think that was kind of by design. But then after that, 67 versus Houston, 122 versus Dallas, but Dallas had the number 1 run offense in the NFL and held them to 50 yards less than they averaged during the season. 62 versus the Jets, 163 to the Chargers, but 75 of those were on one run. And then 78 versus the Panthers last week. So their run defense is starting to turn into one of the strengths on the defense as well, which is something that we thought might be one of their strengths going into the season. And since they're holding opposing run offenses to not much, it allows the offenses to become one-dimensional, where you know that they're probably going to be passing, and then you can load up against them.
Yeah. Now, kind of going into the Panthers, what do you think of this team after watching Sam Darnold, the wide receivers, their defense?
It's pretty much what we thought. Sam Darnold just didn't look good. I still don't know how much to really put blame on him. He didn't practice at all last week. He came out of a concussion. He has a injured shoulder, and then they still played him anyway.
Broken
He
scapula, they
was
came
great.
out saying yesterday.
What was that?
Is a broken scapula. He's out for 4
Yeah,
to 6 weeks now, which they
yeah,
didn't catch beforehand.
yeah. So like that's why I don't know how much you can really blame him. He was great the first 4 weeks of the season, but he's been horrendous the last 4 or 5. But he didn't do anything. Their offense, McCaffrey was okay, not great. They didn't utilize him as much. You held DJ Moore to pretty much nothing. Their offense pretty much only has DJ Moore, and then if you take him out with McCaffrey being hurt, if you take him out of it, there's not really anyone that can get yards or points against you. So it's kind of tough to say how great this defense really was. I thought this was one of their best games of the year, but they also weren't going up against great talent.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Sam Darnold, as much as I'd love to say seeing ghosts, everything like that, and he doesn't look right, but he hasn't been put in a position to succeed there lately.
Yeah.
Number one, their line has been terrible, and that's going to lead any quarterback to be sped up to maybe making rash decisions. And number two is, like you had said, he's coming off a concussion. He didn't practice the whole week. He didn't have any of that prep, and he has also ended up being a broken scapula, which wasn't even realized before. He tried to got through it. I feel like between the Jets and what has happened recently with the Panthers, I think it's a big detriment to him. Where I think he could be in a much better position if he had the right coaching, and I think he's a really good quarterback. You see the traits he's got the speed, he's got the arm strength. When everything's there, it looks good. I think he's just unfortunately going to be one of those quarterbacks that just never progresses because of the situation is in. And it's really unfortunate. And like you said, with wide receivers, DJ Moore was really shut down. Miles Bryant almost killed him on one of the hits he had, which is amazing to see. He's only they say he's 5'9". He's probably 5'8". He's tiny, and he's still got that. He had the hit there, and he had the hit against, I think, DJ Allen, the previous game against the Chargers. So it was kind of how we were expecting. The defense, again, like we had said before, they have a very fast defense, and we'll kind of get into that when we talk about the Patriots offense. But they can do some things in the passing game, which is, I think, why you saw the Patriots go to that running attack and utilize the running backs, because they do have some issues on the edge. That's why you also didn't see the Patriots running out the middle at all. Kind of going into coaching, like we've been talking about.
Just want to say two quick things on the Panthers. First is just echoing what you said about Darnold. Is you can see just watching him play, he has the talent, but it's just unfortunate that he's probably going to have a wasted career, just that he hasn't been in the situations to succeed. Just one thing that people don't realize is he's only a year older than Mac. He's 24. Mac Jones is 23. So he's still young. He can still progress. But if you keep putting him in situations where he's not able to succeed, not able to progress, it's just unfortunate. And then just echoing what you were saying about Miles Bryant is, even for his size, he's an outstanding tackler, which is something you wouldn't expect for someone that's 5'8", 5'9". Just not even just that DJ Moore play, but just he always wraps up and never misses a tackle. At least it seems so far. So it looks like sometimes one other cornerback that was like that was Malcolm Butler, where he was great in coverage, but he was also an outstanding tackler. And at least so far, it seems like Bryant has those traits so far.
So like going to coaching, like I was saying, we've basically talked about Josh McDaniels and Steve Belichick the last few weeks, kind of grading them, saying what we think went well, what didn't go well. Do you have any gripes with this week between the two of them at all? And actually going on that Steve Belichick, how much do you think is actually Steve? How much do you think is Bill?
I don't really, just trying to think offhand, there isn't really much that I had issues with. Panthers have a very good pass defense, so even though the Patriots only threw for about, I think, less than 130 yards, I don't know how much you can really blame them for that. They had a good pass rush, they had good coverage, so I think they played well, they ran the ball a lot, playing to the Patriots' strengths. I didn't have any major issues with Josh. And then going on Steve, the defense has looked great. It's just tough to really know how much is Steve, how much is Bill, and I don't know if we'll ever really know. But the game plans lately, I'd say last 3 weeks or so, has just been outstanding, and hopefully it's something that they can bring into the remainder of the season.
Yeah, I think my only real gripe with Josh in this game was kind of just how the slow start that they had. But credit to him for adjusting and realizing the game plan that they had wasn't working, the switch. But we've seen that a lot with this team so far, where they don't come out looking that great, and they make some adjustments after a couple possessions, and they look a lot better. So I think that's just my only thing, but that's a big thing with a lot of teams, because the other team is getting paid too, so they're getting paid to throw wrinkles and stuff that you weren't intending to see. So I think kind of maybe just anticipating kind of that stuff a little bit better would be my only thing with that. And then again on Steve, something clearly has changed since the Cowboys game. And there's been a lot of rumblings that Bill has taken a much bigger step in this defense. And you could see it on the sideline too. He's always engrossed in either the sheets that come out, breaking down the different plays, or always talking with the defense. I would say it looks like he's more engaged with it, and from a lot of the reports. So as long as whatever they're doing, they better just keep it up, because what they were doing at the beginning of the season wasn't working right. Going now to Mac, what do you kind of think of his game here?
It's tough to really say. I think it was one of his worst games per se, but it wasn't horrible. He started the game 9 of 11 with a touchdown and an interception, finished 12 of 18, 139 yards, 1 TD, 1 interception, passer rating of 85. Part of it was they just weren't able to get the receivers much into the game. Panthers had a very good pass rush, so he had to get the ball out quick. They threw a lot to the running backs. So it's tough to really know how much to really blame on Mac. He didn't look great. He had that bad interception to Gilmore where he pretty much threw it right at Gilmore. But it's tough. I mean, they also, since they were running the ball well, they didn't have to throw a lot with Mac as well. So he did enough to put the Patriots in a position to win, but he didn't look like he did most of the season. And then
go ahead.
One thing I was just going to say is sort of related to Mac is the offensive line actually looked pretty good outside of a couple of plays here and there. 2 sacks allowed. There was the one where he almost got killed, where he had the fumble loss. It's tough to really, I don't really blame Wynn on that. I think it was just a miscommunication. When I first saw it, I thought that it was Wynn. I was like pretty pissed off about it. But if you actually look at the replay, Wynn looked inside, then looked to see that Hunter Henry was engaging on a full block. It wasn't a chip. So he thought that he could go on the inside man. But then Hunter Henry went back into his route and pretty much let the guy go back. And then by the time that happened, Wynn didn't have enough time to get back on the man. So I think it was just a miscommunication. Tough to really blame him on that. But one interesting thing is Owenu, Mason, and Andrews, pretty much the whole right side of the line, didn't allow a single pressure the entire game. And that's the 4th straight week that David Andrews didn't allow a single pressure. So I know he had some weak points earlier in the year and some inconsistencies, but he's been looking outstanding lately.
And they didn't grade Owenu on a sack, or was that just a talking about pressures in general?
At least the stats I was looking at had Karras with a sack and a pressure.
Okay, because there was one where they completely went by Owenu, where there was another miscommunication where they went completely unblocked and Owenu went inside versus outside.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that was the one where Karras was supposed to be pulling and didn't get over in time.
Okay, that could be it. I would have to go back and look at the tape. But yeah, I think kind of going on Mac, I think I have to basically agree with what you were saying again. So it's a lot of agreeing this episode. But yeah, this wasn't his greatest game, and I think we've been saying that for a couple of games now. But it's also not. You could see why he wouldn't have to do as much of this game too, because they were able to run so effectively, use the running backs in the passing game as well. And we kind of highlighted this before the game by how fast that defense is in the passing game. It's going to cause a lot of issues with this team because it's not a very fast team in general. Myers isn't fast. Bourne isn't fast. Aguilar's kind of fast, but also drops balls. Henry's not fast. And then Smith doesn't know how to get out of his own way most of the time. So, I think we kind of predicted that and saw that, and I think that kind of led to some of Mac looking a little rushed too, just because of how fast his defense was. But I think the biggest thing that you've seen with him so far this year, even in the games that he struggled, is those guys that have it moments. He gets it and he's able to perform when he needs to. And I think that's the biggest thing you need to really look at with him, where yes, he's struggling, or there's a couple times where he's going to a little rut, but when he has to have it, he can lead a drive and get the score that way. And we haven't seen him crumble at all. We haven't seen him get under from the pressure. We saw it when he drove for that touchdown drive with Hunter Henry. We saw it at the end of the Chargers game when he led that like a 6-minute drive to kill the clock. So we've seen a lot with him. That's something that, even though when they're not playing as well, he can do the little things that he needs to do. And again, on the line, the line play, like you were saying, I agreed with Wynn. That wasn't really his fault. There were a few communication issues in this game. Like I had said previously, also there was that 0-1 where maybe it was Karras didn't realize he had to get there or what have you. But that's something that they can clean up. I'm not too concerned about that. There's been a lot of kind of communication issues in general with this team. But like we had said before, when you have 11 new people start between offense and defense, you're going to have a lot of those growing pains. And they've lessened to an extent, but they're still there. I expect probably by the end of the season, they should be mostly tied it up by then. But we still see times where even this week they ended up getting a delay of game at the start of a possession. But that also was due to a little confusion because they were thinking it was supposed to be a TV timeout when it actually wasn't. And even Zoe on the broadcast, they got confused there. They thought they were going to break and they actually weren't. So I could see that, but also it shouldn't be something that's happening. Going on to the running attack, what did you have to, that was probably, we both realized that was the best part of the game for them this week. What were your thoughts on that?
I thought it was pretty good. Brandon Bolden actually ran well for the first time in 4 or 5 years. But they looked pretty good. They were successful. Damien Harris didn't have a great game. He did have the touchdown, but overall he only had 30 yards. But Stevenson looked outstanding. And I know that if with the talent that they have in that running back room with Harris, Stevenson, Taylor, and then I guess you can lump in Brandon Bolden. If one of them is having an off game, they have the talent where the other running backs can take their place and get production. It's not just one running back, and then if they're not able to do well, then they're kind of screwed. They're able to get production as long as the offensive line is able to block. And that's something that we saw this week where Damien Harris didn't have a great game, but Stevenson was tremendous. And then even Brandon Bolden ran very well. And that's something encouraging to look at going forward.
Yeah, I think just to agree again, Bolden actually looked really well. He's actually starting to look pretty well in the past game. He's looking a lot quicker than he did previously. So I'm not sure if that's just something he needed to kind of get the rust off because he had sat last year too. So that could just be, and we've seen it even with Hightower, which we mentioned, he made a couple plays this game where he may be starting to come back to it. Just maybe kind of getting that rust off, getting back in the football shape. But Bolden's actually looking a lot more explosive, a lot quicker, a lot more kind of nimble in the feet. So it was actually a big plus in this game. And then also Stevenson was terrific, and he's really showing to be kind of another steal of the draft, and also a reason why you don't draft a running back in the first round, because you can find these guys third, fourth round like Harris and Stevenson, whereas Michelle was drafted in the first round. It was a complete waste of a pick there.
And then Oh, sorry.
I was
Go
going to
ahead.
say, just with Stevenson, how explosive he is for his size. He is very quick. He's not just fast, but he's kind of agile and quick and can cut really fast. And the power that he's got, he can run over people. There was that stiff arm where he threw someone out into the sidelines.
Yeah.
I really like him. I hope he can continue this pace and just not have any fumbles or any of the issues that have kind of caused him to not be active each week. Because there were some thoughts. There was one of the games though, when he ended up not being active, that there's either a late to practice or late to a meeting, that sort of thing. But hopefully he can just keep on trucking there.
Yeah. And the one thing I was going to say is I would have never ever expected this, but at least in recent weeks, it looks like Brandon Bolden is kind of taking the James White role where he's actually catching it out of the backfield, and he's pretty good at pass blocking.
Mhm.
So he's surprisingly been very underrated this year. Outside of this week, hasn't been great running, but
Mhm.
it looked like he took a step this week, and we'll see how that translates going forward.
Yeah. So kind of looking at the 3 up, 3 down. I'll give you a little breather. I'll start first. I'll
Okay.
just list my 3 up, and then I'll just discuss why. I think ours are pretty close. We discussed a little
Yeah.
pregame for this. I can't even remember who you picked those. So, actually, now I do. So my 3 up, no particular order. Matthew Judon, Christian Barmore, and Stevenson. Um, so like I had said with Stevenson, he was terrific in this game. He was quick, he was explosive, he was powerful. He was a really good asset for them, and hopefully the concussion, he can kind of get out of that concussion protocol pretty soon, so that way he'd be able to play this coming week. But I thought he was a really good back in this game, and really got some good yardage for him. Christian Barmore, again, each week he gets better and better each week. I really think that he's probably the biggest steal of the draft, besides Mac Jones, um, based on how Mac will be compared to the other 4 quarterbacks picked in the first round. I think those two could be basically the steals of the draft, and potentially Stevenson too. And I think just the amount of pressure that he gets on the quarterback and the amount of interceptions that we even kind of forced between him. There was the interception, like we had said, with that JC had. And then he also did the first drive. He ended up batting down that pass at the line of scrimmage, where if he didn't, it was going to be a clear touchdown to McCaffrey.
Yeah.
So I think just a lot of the intangibles he brings too. Each week I feel like he's just going to be on this list every week, because there's something he does every week to help win the game. And the same thing goes with Matthew Judon. I can't remember a time I haven't had him on 3 up, and I kind of feel bad. It's just wasting a spot for someone else to shine, but he really deserves it. The amount of times he gets held, it's almost on
Yeah.
every single rush that he's getting held. He's getting wrapped around the neck, and he's still getting pressure even by being held. And he just had a really good game. I can't really say much more other than what I just be repeating myself all the time. Just
Yeah.
congratulations to him too. Him and his, I think, wife
Yeah.
had their 3rd child today. So he was out of practice for that, but hopefully he'll be all ready to go and not sleep deprived for Sunday.
Yeah, so my 3 up in a particular order. Number 1, Christian Barmore. Number 2, I have to go with JC Jackson. Number 3, Stevenson, and then honorable mention Judon. So once again, I can't stick with the limit of 3 for 3 up. But number 1, going with Christian Barmore. He's just getting better each and every week, just wreaking havoc in the run game, even and in the pass game, even in the run game. The thing that's unfortunate for him is he should be in the running for defensive rookie of the year, but
Mhm.
just due to the nature of his position as defensive tackle, he doesn't get the plays that show up in the stat sheet where people that isn't watching him every week can see how productive and how much of a force he is. But 3 hurries, 2 batted passes, 2 stops. He's just been outstanding. And then the other thing that's just a credit to him is a lot of times he's being double blocked and he's still wreaking havoc. Uh, Number 2, J.C. Jackson. I know I was hard on him earlier in the year, but it looks like he's finally hitting his stride. 1 catch on 4 targets, 2 yards allowed, 2 pass deflects, 2 interceptions, and 1 touchdown. The first interception, it was a very errant throw by Darnold, where the tight end was actually pretty wide open, but due to the pressure by Barmore and Judon, he had to release it early, off balance, and then right into J.C. Jackson's hands. But if you actually look at the play, he was actually playing. He was in a zone, but playing it very well. So that's just a credit to him. And then the second interception, outstanding coverage in the end zone for the interception. Last 4 weeks, he's only allowed 9 catches on 25 targets for 113 yards. So averaging just under 30 yards against a game, 5 pass breakups, 3 interceptions, and a touchdown. It looks like he is, the last 4 weeks or so, he looks like he is that number 1 cornerback, which is good for the Patriots, at least going forward the rest of the season, that if he can keep this up, he should be in the running for potentially all pro, which is pretty impressive considering how inconsistent he was early on in the year. And then number 3, Stevenson, 10 carries, 62 yards, 6.2 yards per carry, 2 catches, 44 yards, 106 total yards. He has an explosion, which is impressive for his size. He's 6 feet, 240 pounds, and just has a burst, which is something you wouldn't expect for someone that size. And then I had to include Matthew Judon. The reason why he wasn't in my top 3 is kind of unfair to him, sort of like what you were saying, is that he's just this consistent, this outstanding every single week. And it's kind of unfair. If this was just a one-off, he would definitely be in the top 3 based on his performance. But he's making an impact in the run game, setting the edge, in the pass game, chipping tight ends, chipping running backs that are going out for throwing them off their routes, and then still getting pressure. He's just been outstanding and should be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. I don't think he will get it, but I think he should be in the running. He's just been that impactful on this defense. I think that's all I had to. I know you mentioned a lot, so don't want to add too much, but I can jump into my 3 down.
All right.
Which I don't think I discussed this with you, who my 3 down are.
Yeah.
So number 1, I'll go with Mac. Number 2, Damien Harris. Number 3, Jacoby Myers. So Mac, like we said, this was one of his worst games. It wasn't horrible. Just statistically, 12 completions on 18 attempts, 139 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He just wasn't great, but they also didn't need him to be great. They didn't need him to throw 30, 40 times since they were running the ball so efficiently. It's just, he is a rookie. Last 2 weeks, he hasn't looked great, but he's also gone up against 2 of the 3 or 4 best passing defenses in the NFL. So just seeing looks that he hasn't really seen. I still think he's been very good this year for a rookie quarterback. We'll just have to see how he is going forward. But not to discourage him or anything. It was just, he wasn't great, but he wasn't horrible. But in a good win like this, there weren't too many people to point out for their just being down this week. Number 2, Damien Harris, 15 carries, 30 yards, so only 2 yards per carry. He did have the touchdown, but he wasn't as good as he was the last 3 or 4 weeks, where he was running around 100 yards a game, having an explosion. He just didn't have that this week. But he wasn't horrendous. He still got the touchdown and got some yards when you needed him, but just a down week for him. Then number 3, Jacoby Myers. He was going up against Gilmore a lot, but 1 catch on 4 targets, 8 yards. He was targeted by Mac on the interception by Gilmore, but he is your number 1 receiver, and he just wasn't able to get separation. He was going up against a very good cornerback, but Gilmore was out for a lot of the season. It's just a little, some concern that it's showing Jacoby Myers isn't that number 1 receiver. I know he's the number 1 receiver on this team, but if number 1 cornerback can shut him down, then who are you going to be able to get production from the rest of your guys? So he has been very good this year. I think he's on pace to average around 85 to 90 catches for over 1,000 yards, but just something to keep an eye on. he's good, but I don't know if he is that number one receiver that you might need in the playoffs.
Yep. So I've got one of the three you had with my three down. So I have Jacoby Myers, I have Jonnu Smith, and then I have why am I forgetting his name? The punter. Jake Bailey. So like you said, Myers, he just really wasn't good in this game. He had a couple issues in the run blocking. And actually, even on that Stevenson 40-something yard catch that he had, he actually ended up having a legal block in the back, which they ended up not calling, but it was one. And then he just really wasn't good in the passing game. He wasn't able to get separation. And he wasn't going up against Gilmore the entire time. I'm not sure what Gilmore's snap count was, but it wasn't
it wasn't
every single down or anything, but he still wasn't able to get separation. That kind of shows, like we said, they have a really fast team, so that was going to kind of be the detriment for Myers because he's not that fast, and it takes him a while to get open, and you kind of saw that there. And even on the interception, it was partly his fault too. It wasn't Mac. It was Mac's fault for not realizing that he was going to be able to jump the route, but Myers should have ran that route better, and he should have blocked off Gilmore from actually getting that. So I think just the awareness on his part too there was kind of a mistake there. With Jonnu Smith, he just doesn't look like I had said last week. It takes a lot to get him going, and he's really good when he has the ball, but the steps to get to having him the ball, he just does not look right. And it looks like a lot of it's still in his head. And you could see that a lot this game. Unfortunately, he ended up getting hurt in this game. So hopefully he's going to be on track to play again, but next week. But again, it just, he hasn't looked right ever since that Saints game where he had those drops, and it looks like he's thinking too much, even still. So I think that needs to stop for him to actually be productive. And it could just be the complexity of the offense. It may take him the rest of this year to really kind of get under. But luckily with Henry, we've seen kind of a connection between him and Jones. And then Jake Bailey, it is mainly just because the frustration I've had with him throughout this whole year. He hasn't been the same punter. I know you said that last year was an all-pro, kind of a blip type of year. You're not supposed to have that year, type of year, but he just needs to be better when they're choosing to punt on 4th and 1 at their own 40-something, close to the 50-yard line. You need to get that ball within I'd say 10 yards or so, kicking it into the end zone. And he's done that numerous amount of times this year. And that needs to be improved because the way he's going right now, it's just not the way he was last year. And who knows, that there's that kicker out of San Diego that if he's just going to bring that up for the draft, he may be looking at being cut, and he may be another Ryan Allen where he could be completely out of the league after this. Probably not, because he was a really good punter, and someone's got to try and catch on with that. But if he doesn't improve, he could be looking outside.
Yeah, just wanted to bring this up. I haven't watched a San Diego State game this year, but their punter, Matt Arezia, who's a junior, he's a punter and a kicker, has just been absolutely unbelievable. I think he's averaging 54 yards a punt. He has 16 punts of 60 yards. He has 2 80-yard punts this year, with one of them traveling 90 yards in the air, which, just for context, he has 2 80-yard punts this year. In the whole NFL the last decade, only 2 the entire NFL. So just something to be interesting. And he's a junior, so I don't know if a junior will declare for the draft for a punter. Mm-hmm. But I could see, if he does, I could see Belichick going after him if he thinks Bailey isn't the same that he was last year.
Yep. So kind of looking at the news around the league from the NFL and the AFC, I think the first thing we kind of address would be Odell Beckham Jr. Not surprisingly, he ended up clearing waivers, which we all probably kind of suspected based on that contract. What has been surprising has been just the length of time it's taken to actually have him get signed. You would
Yeah.
think that because this is kind of well known that the Browns are going to be cutting him. I think they cut him officially Friday, but it was really
I think
even known.
unofficially it was either Sunday or Monday morning, I think.
I think officially Monday, but I
But
think
it was
it
announced they were going to cut him like last Thursday.
yeah, I think Friday is when the team announced it on their press release, and it was mostly rumored and confirmed on Thursday. So you've had since basically Thursday night to try and work a deal with even though you're technically not supposed to, but you see it happens all the time in the NFL. You look at free agency where they're getting this stuff done before even the legal tampering period. So teams should have an idea with him what it's going to take and who's going to be on top. So I just don't understand why it's taken this long.
Yeah.
But that's kind of not really a matter of fact. I think the one question I have for you would be, would you want him? And the really one thing before you answer that is I feel like the longer this goes, and I know he said that he needs to sleep on it, he's not going to make another decision for a day or two. And this could just be like the diva and him wanting to be in the news for the next 2 or 3 days. But I feel this also doesn't look good for the Patriots, where the Patriots usually have a take it or leave it deal. They're not going to be going back and forth with negotiations, trying to win you over in free agency. They're going to give you what the deal is. They're going to say, listen, this is what we offer. This is what we want you to have. This is what we can do for you. If you like it, good. If you don't, too bad.
Yeah.
So I feel like the longer this goes on, the chances of it happening, I feel like are less and less each time. But what do you think the Patriots should do? What do you think will happen? And then I'll kind of just give my opinion on that.
Yeah. So just preference, just first and foremost, right now that we're recording on Wednesday night. So as of now, he hasn't been signed with anyone. By the time we actually post this, he could sign with someone, but the way everything's going, chances are he still probably won't sign by the time we post this tomorrow. But if I was the Patriots, I still want him. He does look like he does have that talent, and their wide receiver core is okay, but it's not great. As we saw, like Jacoby Myers, our number one receiver, and he just wasn't able to get separation. And the Patriots have an issue in the red zone recently. Hunter Henry's been productive, but outside of that, no one else. He could give you that red zone target that you're missing. If I'm the Patriots, if you're able to get him without giving up too much money, I know that they're kind of strict against the cap, but if you can get him, I would. I just don't like how he's dragging this out. It's kind of making it seem like, yes, I wanted him, but now I'm starting to get over him, since it looks like he's trying to make it more about himself and have the attention on him. But if you're able to get him, I think you have to. I know there are some concerns about locker room issues, but that's something that Bill has historically shown that if you're going to cause an issue, he's going to cut you. He doesn't care. So if you're able to get him, bring him in, I think you have to bring him in. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this would be I would take the chance on it, and I don't think it's a big chance to be taking, assuming you're not
Yeah.
giving him a ton of money. So I think this would basically be a 1-year tryout this year, and then see what happens. If he does work out, then have him for next year. I'm not sure if he's going to want to. I'm not sure what kind of contract he wants. If it's a 1 or 2 year deal, if it's 1 year, then see what he does, and then revisit in the offseason, see if you can re-sign him, because you can't really tag him because you're going to have to tag JC Jackson. Or if they can luckily somehow get a 2-year deal, but not have too much commitment for next year, then do it that way. Just because I think with Aguilar, they could use an upgrade there, and kind of just see, is it something, does he mesh well with you? He still has, I think, some talent left in him. And this could be like a more situation. So see what happens. It can't hurt. And if he doesn't do well, it doesn't mesh well this year, just cut him. And if he does do well, then you can look to try and get out of the Aguilar contract next year by trading Aguilar. And you would get some cap savings that way from that. So I think it's really beneficial. I think if he does mesh and everything goes well, this could give Mac a receiver for the next few years. But I wouldn't give too much commitment, just because we saw what happened with Moss previously. You don't want to try and give these type of receivers too long of a leash, because then you can end up getting screwed from that. But I'm definitely for it. I wouldn't be spending too much though. So That's the only thing. If other teams go in and try and open their wallet for him, I definitely wouldn't do it. If you
Yeah.
can get him on the cheap, I would definitely be all for it. But the longer this drags out, the less I just want this over with, and I,
Yeah.
it feels like it's more about him than anything, than him just not being able to make up his mind. But we'll see.
Just
Yep.
one thing to just note is there are a lot of comparisons of him to Moss. I think Moss was a better receiver in his prime than Odell is by
Mhm.
far. But one thing just to consider is he is 2 years younger than Moss was when Moss came to the Patriots. So it's not like he's old and on the way out. He still is young.
Mhm.
He just turned 29 last week. So he still could have some in the tank. I think ultimately, my guess he signs with the Chiefs. I just see that happening, but I wouldn't be surprised if I wouldn't be shocked if he comes to the Patriots. I'm not expecting it the more this drags on, but could also see him going to the Packers or the Saints. I hope it's outside the AFC, but I could see him going to I think he's going to go to the Chiefs.
Yeah, I feel like the Chiefs make the most sense based on what they've been doing, what they bring in people for. Packers, I don't think they're willing to open up the money for him. Saints, I get that it's his hometown. I just don't see what the appeal is other than that. Just the quarterbacks there, but Sean
He'd
Payton's a
be
really
the
good
number one
coach,
option there.
and he'd be the number one option. The Chiefs just make a lot of sense because they just don't really. It doesn't seem like they care about the cap at this
Yeah.
point. They just been keep backloading everything. Eventually, it's going to come to bite them in the ass. But and Josh Gordon hasn't seemed to really work out so far. He hasn't really done much with them, so he could be an upgrade over Josh Gordon too. And they've never been shy about trying to get talent on that team, especially on offense.
Yeah.
And also since Mahomes been kind of struggling.
Yeah.
So I would pick the Chiefs too. I feel like my gut is saying the Patriots probably won't get him. Would I be shocked if they got him? No, but we'll have to see with that. Kind of again going on the Aaron Rodgers situation. What do you think about the Packers game and him in general?
I think him in general, I'm not a big fan of Aaron Rodgers. I think he's
Mhm.
very over. I think he's a very talented quarterback. I think he is one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. But I'm not. I think he is overrated. Where the media is always saying he's the greatest ever, when I don't think that's true. I'm not a fan of his like personality, his arrogance, but I don't have too much of an issue with like what he did. Um, I think the interview with Pat McAfee hurt him a lot. I think
Mhm.
it was kind of stupid on his part, but I think it was also overblown in the media too. Some of the things he said. If he just came out and said, "I have an allergy to the mRNA vaccines," and I didn't like the side effect profile of Johnson Johnson, I think he should have just said that. But everything, I understand a little bit why he sort of misled the media, considering how um, what the reaction was like to Cole Beasley, Kirk Cousins, and Carson Wentz, who are all unvaccinated, seeing what that reaction was like. And if he said that he was unvaccinated, knowing that he'd get the same reaction. So I understand why he was misleading per se, but I think it's been a little drawn out of proportion, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think basically the same sort of thing. I think neither of us really like him as a person or quarterback. I think he's kind of too into himself
Yeah.
and isn't really about the team. And if I were the Packers, I would have tried to get out from underneath him before because I just don't think he's a winner. Um, but after watching this Packers game, they could be kind of screwed because
Yeah.
Jordan Love doesn't look like he's even remotely close to being the X option. I get that last year was his rookie season, and this is only his second year, but still he just looks completely raw and does not look like he doesn't look like he's your next quarterback. I
Yeah.
still could be wrong on this. It could be too early and he needs more time to develop.
Yeah.
But he just did not look the part. He was very skittish there. Um, he did not have really any good spirals. He was jumping, trying to throw the ball. He just looked like a chicken with his head cut off, kind of running around there. Um, and also credit to the Chiefs. They were bringing a lot of pressure. They were blitzing him a ton because they knew that they could. So I think he could have been helped if they dial up a few more plays to try and beat the blitz more. But He just did not look ready. My gut after watching that was like the Packers have to do one of two things. They have to either re-sign Rodgers and keep him happy for the next few years just to keep him content. But you're probably not going to win because he's going to end up choking in the NFC Championship game. Or you trade Rodgers and try and get a huge haul for him, and then try and rebuild and hope you find another quarterback somewhere. Probably unlikely to be next draft because the quarterback class coming out isn't supposed to be that high. But that's the biggest kind of take from that game was they don't have the next guy.
Yeah, I mean he was very raw coming into the draft, and that could be he's just not at that point yet. He could be in a couple of years, but it just doesn't look like it's going to be next year. Where right now they are one of the better teams in the NFL, and if Rodgers decides to leave after this year, I don't think he's going to be ready for next year.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. There were a bunch of huge upsets this week. It ended up killing me out of my survivor pool, killed a whole bunch of people, about 80% of my league in one of them. It just kind of shows the parity between the league this year, especially in the AFC. I think it even puts really the division up for grabs right now, which we weren't really thinking was a possibility other than kind of a pipe dream. Like, oh, if they win out, then they control their own destiny and just laugh about it. But I would not be shocked at all if the Bills were to lose at least another game. And then before they get to the Patriots game, where the division's completely up for grabs. So I think that could be a really big thing. And then technically it's probably not going to happen. There's always a chance for the first seed. It's very unlikely, but the fact that just how no team has really shown that they're even that good has kind of shown that the Patriots could sneakily be kind of up there this year, even in the playoffs. So who really knows once we get into the playoffs there?
Yeah. Just going on the Bills, they played horrendous against the Jaguars. I know their offensive line was dinged up, and that was part of it where they were able to get pressure on Josh Allen. But it's just showing, like you said, there's just so much parity in the AFC, and it's kind of showing that lost to Miami especially, but even the games that you could have won against Buccaneers and Cowboys could bite you in the ass in the end of the season looking back. There is no number one team. We thought a few weeks ago that it was the Bengals. Now they're 5-4. When they were, I think 4-1, we thought then it was the Bills. The Bills lost to the Jaguars. Now the number one team's the Titans, but the Titans are without their best player. I know they beat the Rams, but the Rams also had a lot of turnovers. So there's not really that one team that stands out. And realistically, any team that makes the playoffs in the AFC could end up making it to the Super Bowl just because there is no one team that stands out. Another thing is, like you were saying on the division, I still think it's tough because unless the Bills lose to the Jets, or you sweep the Bills are going to hold the tiebreaker against you because the first is head to head, and if you split with the Bills, then the second goes to division. Since you lost to Miami, if the Bills don't lose to the Jets, Bills are going to be 5-1 in the division. Patriots are 4-2. So it is going to be tough. You'd have to hope that Bills are playing a couple of tough games. They still have to play the Saints. The Saints are without Winston now. They have to play the Buccaneers, which is going to be a tough game. Then they have to play the Colts, whereas the Patriots have the Browns coming up, then the Titans, and then the Colts later on. So it is going to be tough, but it is possible. But another thing that's just jarring in the AFC is Patriots currently are the number 3 wildcard team at 5-4. And then the team that's currently 5th back in the wild card, or the number 12 seed in the AFC, the Colts, are only 1 game back of that last wild card. So there's 12 teams that are essentially within 2.5 games of each other. So who really knows how the season's going to end, but it just shows that all the teams in the AFC are very close together. And it's kind of good for the Patriots as long as they don't lose some games that they should win in the upcoming games. They should be able to make the playoffs and have a realistic shot of possibly making it to the Super Bowl or at least AFC Championship game this year.
Yeah, it should be really interesting to see what the kind of damage they can do. They're just going to keep stacking wins up and go from there. I think the next thing we can get into pretty quickly would just be that Browns game that's coming up. The Browns are coming in with a pretty banged up team right now. Baker still, he has that shoulder injury that's going to be nagging him this year unless he gets surgery done. Kareem Hunt is on the IR. You have Chubb is out on the COVID list. Garrett's hurt with a foot injury. Landry's hurt with the foot injury. Clowney's out with an ankle. They may not be out for the game coming up, but it is something to kind of be aware of. So this could actually be the kind of the best case scenario for the Patriots coming up, where this is a kind of hard to make of team. You don't really know about the Browns. Are they good or are they bad? I think with all that talent, you have to say they are decent. But coming in here with those injuries and the COVID could be a pretty good luck for the Patriots. So what do you see would be kind of the keys to the game for this?
Yeah, this is just a tough game to really get a hold on. The Browns have looked good. Their offense has looked good in some games where they scored 40-something points. Against the Chargers, they scored 41 points against the Bengals, 31 against Houston, 29 against Kansas City. But then there's been other games where they only scored 14 against the Vikings. They only scored 14 against the Cardinals. They only scored 17 versus Denver. They only scored 10 versus Pittsburgh. So it's kind of tough to get a read on who this team is. Some weeks their defense looked really good. Other weeks their defense looks horrendous. If Chubb is out, I think the Patriots are going to have a huge advantage just because pretty much the Browns' whole offense goes through their running game with both Kareem Hunt and Chubb. With Kareem Hunt out, it's going to have to rely on Chubb, and if Chubb's out, it's going to be pretty tough for them. Just some stats: the last 2 years when Chubb has been active, the Browns are 13-6, averaging 27 points a game. The 6 games without Chubb, they're 3-3, averaging under 19 points a game. And then even when he's not playing, their passing yards have been down because since their whole offense runs through their running game, they do a lot of play action. And without him, defenses don't have to really sell on the play action, sell on the run. So I'm not a big fan of Baker Mayfield. I don't think he's that good. I think he's very overrated. I know you're a big fan of him, but I don't think if Chubb is out, I don't think he alone can bring the Browns offense down the field and score points to beat the Patriots. Unless I think the only way if Chubb is out, the Patriots lose this game is if they shoot themselves in the foot, if they lose it themselves, if they have big turnovers, if someone gets hurt like Mac, or if there's turnovers. I think that's the only way without Chubb. If Chubb is playing, it's going to be definitely a very close game, but it's just tough to really make of it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing we were kind of talking about before we jumped on here. Is what is this team going to be? They've been kind of really bipolar this season. So what team are you going to be getting? Like you said, I'm a pretty big Baker Mayfield fan. The Patriots were too, and it even came out this week that there were talks that they were really trying to trade up to number 2 if the Browns didn't end up picking him that year. So it's something where Josh liked them, Bill liked him. He does have guts. He does have that kind of fighting spirit that you like to see. And I think he's a pretty good quarterback. But I think the thing that's really against his favor right now is, one, he's got that shoulder injury, which even though it's not his non-throwing injury, it does kind of screw up your mechanics a little bit. And does, I would imagine, it hurts a lot when if you're getting hit. So I think the Chubb is huge. Their other running back, I think his name is Jonas Johnston, that would be in his place. He did really well the one game that he had to go in place of Chubb. But it'd be interesting to see what the Patriots do here. So I would say if Chubb is not active for this game, usually they try and key in on one ear and shut you down and force you to beat you with an area. I would try and just shut Baker down at this point, and we've seen this year it can be done. And then force them to run on you and see if that, more than just happens. This year, but I don't know. I'm still a big Baker fan, so I think that's the key to the game. If Chubb's in, I would say the complete opposite. You shut down Chubb, you force Baker to beat you, which again, like this year, maybe he won't, or maybe he would, like the previous game. But Chubb did really well in that game too. So I think kind of the lines right now, looking at them, the Patriots are favored by 1.5. Basically, just because they're home, it's basically kind of a tie at that point. Usually get 3 points.
Just before we get into predictions, just a
Yep.
couple things that I want to just hone in on.
Yep.
I think, like, I agree. I think if Chubb is in, I think you have to stop him. I think that's going to be one of the keys of the game. But I think the biggest key of the game is the Browns front seven versus the Patriots offensive line. Browns have the number 3 rushing defense in the NFL, averaging 85 yards, only 85 yards allowed. Patriots, as we've seen the last 5-6 weeks, the offense has been going through the running game. And then considering Damien Harris and Stevenson both got concussions last game, and they're in concussion protocol this week as of right now, they might not play. So if it depends, I think if Stevenson and Harris, if they're eligible to play, we still don't know how well they'll do against this good front seven. And then another aspect is offensive line for the Patriots was shaky the first 4 weeks. It's looked really good lately, but Browns have probably the best pass rush in the NFL. Number 2 in sacks, 27 sacks. Number 1 in quarterback hits with 69 hits. They're averaging almost 8 quarterback hits a game. Myles Garrett, who has his 90% of his snaps this year have been going up against the left tackle. So Myles Garrett against Isaiah Wynn potentially. We'll have to see how that goes. He has 12 sacks on the year. He has 23 quarterback hits, 36 pressures. And then on the other side, it's not just Myles Garrett you have to worry about. Jadeveon Clowney only has 3.5 sacks, but he has 12 quarterback hits and 20 pressures this year as well. So that pass rush, not only in the passing game against the Patriots offensive line, we saw how quick Mac Jones had to get the ball out of his hand last week. It's going to have to be even quicker this week. So the receivers have to get quick separation. You might have to utilize the running backs in the passing game as well. But then also they're very good in the run defense as well. So if the Patriots offensive line is able to hold them down, I think they can have success. But it's going to be very tough. And it's going to, I think, is going to be the biggest matchup of the game and something to watch out the entire game.
Yeah, I don't think I have really much to add in that point. Those are some really good points about what's going to give them challenges. So where was I going before that?
Oh, one more thing I just wanted to add is Trent Brown was back at practice this week. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, does he play on Sunday? I think my guess is if he is active for Sunday, he's not going to start. If he is healthy enough to play on Sunday, I would have him on the bench and see how the offensive line does. Their chemistry has been pretty good the last 4 or 5 weeks, so I don't know if I'd want to shake it up. But if Isaiah Wynn is having trouble against Myles Garrett, then you might want to put in Trent Brown against him. So you have him as a safety net on your bench. So if the offensive line isn't looking great against them, you don't have to use Justin Herron or Durant or could just against Myles Garrett. You have a 6'8", 350-pound left tackle who has historically been, at least with the Patriots, has been good. So I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Is he active? Does he start? If he doesn't start, does he come off the bench because the offensive line is having issues?
Yeah, I think that's another thing to think about too. I would imagine for this game he's probably not going to be active. Usually, I think you have, I don't know what the time period is.
You have 21 days from when you first start practicing.
Yeah. So usually it's not that first week when it happens.
Yeah.
You want to get him back in shape. You want to get him ready for games. I would imagine just based on that injury history and him and his size, you wouldn't want to just have him kind of get out there and start from there. So I'd imagine you're looking at another week or two of him not playing. But who knows? He could be really useful against Myles Garrett in that point. Kind of switching gears now, just to the prediction for the game. Patriots are favored 1.5, over under 45. 1.5 basically means that if it was at a neutral site, the Browns would actually probably be favored at this point by a little bit. So what are your predictions for the game?
Like I was saying earlier, I don't really know. It's tough to fully interpret what to make of this Browns team, where there's some games where they look like the best team in the NFL. There's other games where they look like they're not going to make the playoffs. And then the other things you have to factor in is for the Patriots, is Damien Harris and Stevenson able to play? Or are they both going to still be in concussion protocol and leave? Is Chubb going to be able to play? Is Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, who are both out of practice today, are they going to be able to play? I'm going with the assumption that at least either Harris or Stevenson is going to play, and all the main players for the Browns are going to play. Just with the exception of Chubb, since he has COVID, that's just more of an uncertainty. So I'm going to make two predictions. One prediction where Chubb plays, and then everyone else for the Browns is playing, and then at least one of the backs for the Patriots is playing. If Chubb plays, I'm predicting over under is 45. I'm predicting the Patriots to win 27-23. If Chubb doesn't play, I think Patriots are going to win 31-17.
Yeah, I think that's pretty close to where I'm at. I'm thinking they're going to win 31-27. It's going to be a pretty close game, separated by a little bit more than a field goal at that point. But who knows? It could also be. I wouldn't be shocked either way if it's a complete blowout. If it's kind of close, like in lower amount of points, so they're both. It's maybe like a 17-14 game, or if it's a complete shootout. That's, I would think, less likely just based upon what the offense we've seen so far, and going against this defense. But I would say probably 31-27. But really wouldn't be shocked either way. So I would go with the over though. I'm fairly confident on that.
I don't see a blowout. I don't see the Patriots getting blown out unless Mac looks even worse than he did the last few weeks, where he has like 3 or 4 interceptions. Outside of that, I don't see the Patriots being blown out by the Browns offense. Usually Bill has been known to shut down opposing teams' number one option. If Chubb is playing, the run defense has looked really good the last 5-6 weeks. So I still think Chubb is one of the best running backs in the NFL. He might get his yards, but I don't see him alone beating you. And then pretty much the only, now without Beckham, number one receiving option is Jarvis Landry. So I don't see just Chubb and Landry alone with Baker as your quarterback being able to blow out the Patriots, but we'll have to see.
Yep. I think the other thing too is, besides the Jets, Bill's hatred for any other team would be the Browns, even though this team technically isn't the same Browns team that he had left.
Which I did. If you actually read the Bill Belichick biography by David Abramson, A Coaching Life, it gets into a lot of it. It's not necessarily the team itself. It's how the media essentially and the fans treated him when he was in Cleveland and on the way out. So his hatred for that city, I think, has a lot to do with it. It's not the team of the Browns. It's the whole area.
Yeah, I think we kind of saw that.
That book does a very good job of going into it. So first of all, I highly recommend it. It's one of the best books I ever read, and it definitely gets into the psyche of Bill Belichick. Sidetrack, but it also gets into his aspect of when he was in Cleveland and why he still continues to hate the Cleveland Browns, even though they're not the team that he used to coach for.
Yep. And then Steve Belichick kind of alluded to that too. And he was saying that he had learned from his dad's time in Cleveland that you can't trust the media, and then throwing in, oh, that was a joke, but he definitely wasn't joking at that point, that they don't like the Cleveland media and the Cleveland fans. So if anything, Bill's going to try and probably run up the score if he can. Unlikely it happens, but anytime Bill gets a chance to kill the Jets or the Browns, he loves to hold a good grudge. So just another interesting side note there. Anything else?
I think that covers it.
All right. So thank you again for listening to this episode. Again, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple or Spotify, in YouTube as well. Just keep those subscriptions going up, keep those reviews going, and follow us again at Pat's 300 Level Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to talking to you again next week.